It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul is at the Professional Developers Conference in Redmond. Microsoft's opportunity to talk to developers about Windows Phone 7, IE 9, and more. We'll have the details coming up next with Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 180, recorded October 28th, 2010. To the cloud. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. If you're in tech support, solve problems fast with the leader in remote support software. Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/Windows. And by Ford and the new 2011 Ford Fiesta. With an EPA estimated 40 highway miles per gallon, no other compact car is more fuel efficient. Drive one this week at a dealer near you. And see how the Ford stacks up to the Lamborghini when it comes to agility. Watch the Fiesta versus Lamborghini video on YouTube. And by Carbonite. Backing up the files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial, plus 2 free months with your purchase, go to carbonite.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly. Yes, it's time to look once again deep into the crystal ball and prognosticate what is going on in Redmond, Washington. Here from Redmond, Washington, our very own Paul Thurrott, the editor-in-chief of the Supersite for Windows, winsupersite.com. He's an analyst for Penton Media. He's a news editor.
I'm using a camera from the past.
You do. You look like you're coming to us from the 50s.
Yeah, it's weird.
What are you doing in Redmond?
I asked myself that same question
Why,
this morning.
Paul? Why? What are you doing there?
This week is Microsoft's PDC 10, the Professional Developers Conference. Usually, Microsoft has a PDC in the beginning of a big platform wave. You know, when they launched Windows NT, when they launched Microsoft.NET or Longhorn, you know. This year, it's kind of just a throwaway extra one. You know, they don't really have
an extra PDC.
They don't have a big new thing happening, but I think they want to make sure developers are on board with their various initiatives, right? IE 9 and Windows 7, Windows Phone.
PDC sometimes is not. There's no regular schedule. Sometimes it's every 2 years. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's not every year that Microsoft comes out with a major new platform, you know, so they don't really have to do it all the time. You know, Windows Vista was delayed so many times, I think they had at least 3 PDCs during that little debacle. But,
right.
You know, they've kind of settled into a normal schedule, and then they threw this little curveball. So from the perspective of on-site attendees, this is the smallest PDC by far, although that's by design because they're having it at the campus where they can only have a certain number of people anyway.
How many?
And I don't know. I'm sorry, but
order of magnitude, hundreds, thousands, millions.
Oh, several thousand.
Several thousand.
I'm sorry. That's not true. A couple thousand, I would think. But there are tens and tens of thousands of people following along live. And so actually from that perspective, it's the biggest PDC ever. That's the way they're describing it.
If I wanted to watch, could I watch a live stream or do I have to be signed up as a developer?
You can just, anyone can see it.
Oh, that's neat. Where is that?
I believe it's at MicrosoftPDC.com.
Somebody said that Mark Russinovich is about to speak in about half an hour.
Yeah, he did a little bit of the keynote.
He's the guy who did Sysinternals. Microsoft bought and hired him.
Yep.
And really, really cool guy. I'm glad that they kind of show him off.
Yeah, if they could convince him to do a little more of the running the company stuff, that might not be such a
well, there's an opening, I hear.
Yeah. And actually, that's an interesting point because he is a possibility.
You're kidding.
In my mind. I mean, if someone who could do that
chief
job.
software architect, really?
Absolutely, yeah.
He'd be the guy, wouldn't he?
Genius. He's a genius.
How interesting. I mean, isn't he focused on kind of system-level utilities and stuff like that? Or maybe he's gone beyond that now.
Yeah, well, he's very low-level, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what Sysinternals did. Yeah.
No, he's a smart guy, though.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So this is for developers. Is there anything that we can glean for users from this?
Yeah, not much. you know, Obviously, anytime Microsoft tonight at I don't even know what time, 5 p.m. PT possibly is going to announce their quarterly earnings, which are going to be awesome.
That call's coming up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not, they didn't really, of course they can't say anything about that. But the consensus is it's going to be crazy good, and we'll see how that goes. But, as far as news, I mean, a lot, they use the word momentum. I should have had a momentum drinking game going, and then I wouldn't have been able to appear on the show because of
Really? You'd be so drunk.
It was
they
a lot
said
of
it a
momentum.
lot. We talked about this last week. In fact, I think you were ready to be upset about this.
Yeah. So Windows 7 momentum was all the stuff we talked about last week. Nothing new needs to be said there. Although I did, and this was something I was wondering about. They had announced about a week ago that they had sold 240 million new Windows 7 licenses over the past 12 months, which works out to 20 million a month or whatever. But to me, that's a big number. But we know that over 300 and whatever million PCs are sold in a year. So what are the other 100 million computers running?
Right.
And one of the figures they came out with during the keynote was that there were over 350 million new PCs purchased in the last year.
Wow.
And then again, 240 million new Windows 7 licenses. So somehow in the past 12 months, 110 million PCs went out the door with something else.
Pirated versions of Windows, probably.
Well, that's.
I have to think it's at least half of that.
Well, I'm.
It's not Linux.
XP was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many computers did Apple sell? 10, 12 million, something like that.
So I'm seeing on the Seattle Post-Intelligencer blog, Microsoft profit jumps 51%, record Q1 revenue.
Well, wait, so they released it?
Well, sometimes they do this before the earnings call. They'll do a press release. So this is the latest.
Oh, I didn't even look because I thought it wasn't happening.
No, you're right. Net income skyrocketed from $3.57 billion first quarter 2010 to $5.41 billion. This is net income. Profit $5.41 billion in the quarter ended September 30th.
Yeah, this is a real train wreck of a company, isn't it, Leo?
Holy cow!
It's been the thing that's weird about this, and the prediction
that's
I made.
Exxon money, man. That's good bucks.
Oh, they make big money. I mean, we'll get to this in a little bit. I mean, there's been a lot of down talk on Microsoft lately, but what people forget is that this company prints money. It's cute to, I got an email from some jerk with a Mac.com email address who said something like, nice job clinging to a sinking ship.
Yeah,
kind of email. The sinking ship that just made $16.2 billion in one quarter. That sinking ship. Yeah, they're doing terrible.
So even though Windows 7 is celebrated its year anniversary, it's still selling very well. Obviously, Office 2010 is the new edition.
Yep.
Earnings, Wall Street thought they'd make 55 cents a share. They were 62.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Quarterly revenue up 25% of the year to date.
Not bad.
Wow.
Not bad.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive. I mean, Apple's quarterly revenue $20 billion.
Yep. But Microsoft's profit
is higher because it's all software.
Yeah.
So mostly software. Yeah. So, I mean, you can make a larger picture out of this, which is that the computer industry is doing okay.
Yeah, and so the prediction I had made in the press room earlier today at PDC was that Microsoft would release blockbuster record earning results of some kind, and that the story is still going to be some picayune little, Office only grew 15%, and we were thinking it was going to grow 16%, and that's a trouble sign. That kind of thing, where you really have to kind of pick at it to see little problems,
Why is it? I mean, look, you could say, oh, it's the trend that's not in Microsoft's favor, but why is it that the stock price is flat, that people just don't get excited about Microsoft anymore? Is it just psychological?
It's their products, you have to compare them to Apple because Apple is the obvious sort of competitor, the other side of the coin. Apple deals in exciting consumer-oriented products that are very touchy and have, news appeal. Microsoft spent 90 minutes today talking about back-end services that run in the cloud and how you can move VMs up there and
middleware. We love middleware.
It's boring, and don't get me wrong. Some of the stuff Microsoft does is exciting. Obviously, the Xbox is exciting and interesting, especially with this Kinect thing that's coming out. Windows Phone is exciting. Windows 7 is interesting, at least. I don't know, exciting is maybe not the right word, but Windows 7 is certainly something that has a big impact on the consumer market, and all these PC form factors, and there's stuff. But Microsoft, what I just described is only part of Microsoft, right? There's a big chunk of Microsoft that is things like office productivity, or online services, or servers. Not just Windows Server, but server products like Exchange and SharePoint, and that stuff is generates money because they have customers, but it's not interesting. I think from a news perspective. And that's the situation, for Microsoft. It's tough. Their stock has not moved in roughly 8 years, I think it's been, right around 25. It's depending on how you look at it, it may seem a little unfair or whatever, but I think it's an indication of how mature that they are. Steve Jobs' biggest accomplishment, maybe, is that he makes Apple seem new and fresh and young, when in fact they're older than Microsoft, or as old as Microsoft.
Isn't that interesting? You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and even when he was failing at Next, he still had this ability to make Next seem like a startup.
Yeah,
that they might have been failing for 5-6 years in a row, but to people observing the company, it still seemed like it was new and they could still maybe pull it off. Even though they had never done anything successful for that entire time period. It's an interesting thing to be able to do, and I don't know that anyone could ever copy it.
It's a study in consumer and media psychology that I just find fascinating.
Yeah,
but
from books will be written. Books will
absolutely, be written. But it must be very frustrating from Microsoft's point of view.
We because we didn't experience this stuff, we could look back on stories about Standard Oil or whatever the big railroad companies of the late 1800s. Or whatever
previous
it is,
big booms.
We don't understand that stuff, so we have to read books about it. So someday this software situation, this sort of competition that occurs in the tech industry between companies like Microsoft and Apple and others, will be something that people will study, and the world will have moved on, maybe, or maybe we'll still be running Apple i-somethings.
Well, and it's of interest to you and me because. We're in the middle of it, which I think is, I think that's one of the reasons we cover the beat we cover, because it's an interesting beat.
Right. There's always something new to learn, and always something new happening. And I think a lot of people, look, in the same way that we counted Apple out, a lot of people counted Apple out, including a lot of their closest fans.
I counted them out.
Everyone did.
When Gil Amelio was running Apple and Herr Spindler, it was an Apple death watch. I probably have recordings somewhere.
Spindler was the guy who hid under his desk shaking, hoping no one would notice he was even in the room.
Somewhere I probably have recordings of me on the radio saying Apple cannot survive this next year.
Right, and you're not a jerk for having believed that. That's common sense. That they were able to overcome that is the miracle. I mean, that's why it's a miracle.
That's why it's interesting. Yeah, Steve Jobs is a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, and it's odd to me that we live in a time right now where Microsoft is generating all this cash, and they're still seen as, oh man, these guys are in a lot of trouble.
I know. That's the thing that amazes me.
What they're in trouble of is losing influence, and
the trend is the trend against them. It doesn't even when you look at these results, it doesn't even look like the trend is against them.
No, and again, it's easy to write. And there were a lot of stories like this week. I mean, we might as well just jump ahead to the Ray Ozzie thing. Ray Ozzie didn't do Microsoft any favors. He wrote,
what the hell was that blog post? I read it 4 times. I still don't understand it.